My name is Brandy Kade, 31 years old. The bus sighed like a beast, letting go of breath, and I stepped down into the thin November sunlight with a carry-on backpack and a pie balanced in a recycled cake box. The air smelled like wet leaves and chimney smoke. 2 blocks away, my parents' beige colonial sat behind a row of sugar maples, each tree holding onto a few stubborn, rust-red leaves, as if dignity were a matter of grip strength. I checked my watch, 2:00 p.m., exactly on schedule, and started walking. I could have hired a car, I could have arranged, well, anything. But there are times when a bus is a stage cue. You arrive in the costume they expect and let the scene play out. Mom opened the door before I even reached the steps, smile tight as ribbon around a 2 full box. There she is. Did the bus run on time? The word bus did the work of 3 adjectives. It did, I said, holding up the pie. Pumpkin, less sugar. Inside, the usual holiday symphony, turkey breathing quietly in the oven, cranberry sauce cooling on a trivet, a TV murmuring in the den. Emma was already in the living room in a sweater the color of money, phone tilted at her cheekbone angle. She glanced up, cataloged me in one blink, and smiled like she'd won something. "Oh, you made it," she said. "Did you have to take 2 buses? Those transfers are brutal." "Just one," I said, setting the pie down, shrugging off the backpack. "Hi, Dad." He emerged from his study with the scent of whiskey clinging to the paperwork on his shirt. "The transit rider returns," he announced. "Emma, did you show your sister the Range Rover? Top of the line. That's what success looks like." "It's nice," I said. "Nice," he echoed, chuckling. "It's a $120,000 vehicle. Meanwhile, you're paying $2,050 as a ride and calling it independence." My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I did not look. The impulse to look is a muscle you can train until it becomes obedience. Mine obeyed me. Mom linked her arm through mine and guided me into the kitchen, her voice dropping to coaching mode. "Honey, your father could help with a down payment on a used car. Nothing fancy. A Honda. You're 30. 31, I said gently. She blinked, recalibrated. 31. People notice these things. She sliced people thin, like it meant everyone whose opinion we care about. "It's embarrassing," Emma added from the doorway, sipping from a glass she didn't rinse before pouring. Personal safety, optics, adulting. Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia arrived with their laughter first, then the smell of cologne that remembered high school dances. Cousins Marcus and Jennifer followed, the driveway filling with machines that announced their sticker prices in every reflected glare. Hugs happened. Cheek kisses happened. And then, like tide, the conversation receded from them and exposed me. "How did you get here, sweetheart?" Aunt Patricia asked. "Bus?" Emma answered for me, her tone soft with faux mercy. "She doesn't drive." "Oh." Aunt Patricia arranged her face into compassion. "Well, late bloomers can be extraordinary." She made late sound clinical, like a diagnosis you manage. "It's fine," I said, stirring the cranberry sauce I'd been assigned, watching the skins split like small red truths. My phone buzzed again. I thumbed the volume down without pulling it free. "What happens when you need to go somewhere important?" Dad asked, leaning on the island, ice clinking in the glass. "You can't roll into a business meeting from a bus." "I manage," I said. "What business?" Emma set down her glass with a crystal tap. "Didn't you say you had aviation logistics?" She tried the words on like shoes, checking her reflection in them. "I did," I said. "I do." "Right," Uncle Frank chimed in, good-natured cynicism polished over decades. "Like Uber, but for airplanes?" I tasted the cranberry with the wooden spoon. "Something like that." Jennifer raised her phone. "I tried to Google you once. Nothing came up. That's usually not a good sign." "We maintain a low profile," I said. "Code for doesn't exist," Emma sang. My phone buzzed again. Urgent flag. I glanced, just once. A single line from operations. Approach vector confirmed. Weather clear. 45 minutes. I locked the screen without responding. The spoon made a soft knock against the pot, and across the room, Mom's eyes picked up the sound and put it in a jar labeled concern. "You're always on that phone," Aunt Patricia noted. "Some things can't wait," I said, wiping the spoon, setting it down. "The turkey needs 20 more minutes." We migrated to the living room for appetizers, the family tradition of interrogation beginning earlier than usual. Marcus extolled his Audi's acceleration curve like a personal salvation story. Jennifer held forth on the Lexus dealership's negligence. Emma unspooled a monologue about parking garages, climate-controlled, secure, assigned spots like thrones. "That's more than your rent, isn't it?" she asked me, buttering a cracker she didn't eat. "I don't have a car payment," I said. "Exactly," Dad said, pleased to have found a moral point. "Because you can't afford one." Mom winced. "Paul?" "What?" "We've coddled her with this fantasy. It's time for adulthood. A car is safety, independence, proof of functioning." Proof. Funny how often that word sits next to love in this house. My watch read 2:17 p.m. In 38 minutes, the sky would make its own argument. My phone buzzed again. I typed one line with my thumb, proceed as scheduled, and slid the phone back, the gesture neat as a magician palming a coin. "What kind of logistics require this much attention on Thanksgiving?" Marcus asked. "For something that's, how did you put it, low profile?" "The kind where small delays turn into big emergencies," I said. Dad took a swallow, eyes steady on me. "Show me one concrete thing you've built. You're 30. 31, I said. "And you have no car, no house, no—" I set down my napkin. "You want proof," I said. "Okay." Emma laughed, delighted. "Here we go." "Go ahead," Dad said, spreading his hands like a dealer with nothing to hide. "Show us." My phone rang this time. I stepped into the hallway. "Go ahead, Captain." "Ma'am," the voice said, clean, low, and carrying the sound of wind through a headset, "we are 40 minutes out from the coordinates you provided. Weather is clear. Maintain approach?" "Maintain approach," I said. "Standard formation. Landing zone is the large backyard at the address I sent. Confirm GPS." "Confirmed. 3 birds in formation. ETA now 38. "Copy," I said. "See you soon." I walked back into the living room. The room had quieted the way rooms do when they've been eavesdropping on silence. "Work," I said. "Work," Emma echoed. "During Thanksgiving." Dad snorted. "Your imaginary aviation job? What, did someone need an Uber for their drone?" "Prove it," Emma said, arms crossed. "Prove any of this is real." I checked my watch. "You'll see soon enough." "What does that mean?" Dad asked, the drink finally stopping halfway to his mouth. "It means we should take appetizers outside," I said, standing. "The weather's decent, and the backyard has the best sight lines." "Sight lines," Marcus repeated, making air quotes. "To watch nothing happen?" Mom watched me with the expression you reserve for a toddler near a staircase. "Sweetheart, if you're making something up because you're embarrassed." "I'm not embarrassed," I said. I picked up the platter of deviled eggs, their yolks the exact yolk yellow of childhood, and led the way. The sliding door squealed the way it always has, a sound that never learned manners. The yard was half an acre of domesticated dreams, swing set, maple shade, a strip of garden dormant under straw. The grass had healed from summers of badminton and arguments. I put the platter down on the patio table, felt the faintest breeze, the kind that lifts hair and questions. "How long do we have to humor this?" Emma asked, shivering theatrically. I checked my watch again. The second hand ticked like a heartbeat that had learned patience. 33 minutes, I said. "Give or take." "Give or take what?" Jennifer asked, phone already in her hand, the camera a mechanical conscience. "Wind," I said, "and the human tendencies to be early when people are watching." They all stared. In the reflection of the sliding door, I saw us, a row of people framed by their own expectations. For a moment, I felt 7 years old again, chin on the airport railing, memorizing the way light moved on aluminum, promising the sky a secret. "I'll come to you if you come to me." Mom touched my elbow. "Brandy," she whispered, "you can tell me if you're not okay." I looked at her hand, then at the sky that was still, for now, only sky. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm better than okay." "Prove it," Dad said again, softer this time, and I understood. He wasn't asking for evidence. He was asking for a story he could live with. 32 minutes, Yishon, I said, and smiled in a way that made Emma drop her gaze for the first time all day. The first 5 minutes were a ritual of ridicule disguised as small talk. Marcus narrated the weather to his camera like a sportscaster forced to cover stillness. Aunt Patricia shivered and asked if anyone wanted sweaters she didn't plan to fetch. Emma paced in little loops, her boots cutting anxious hieroglyphs into the damp lawn. Dad, Paul, when the world was kind, checked his watch and shook his head as if time itself had disappointed him. 28 minutes, I said, and set down a stack of napkins. "You'll want these." "For what?" Emma snapped. "Tears of laughter?" "For wind," I said. Jennifer lifted her phone higher. "I'm recording this. If nothing happens, I'm posting it. Thanksgiving delusion, a family copes. That's cruel, Aunt Patricia murmured. But viral, Jennifer said, not lowering her camera. Mom hovered close, her voice thin. Sweetheart, if this is some kind of test, we'd rather you just tell us what you need. What I need, I said, is for you to watch. Some silences are flat, some are taut. This one stretched over the yard, like a trampoline we were all about to bounce on whether we wanted to or not. The sun dropped slightly, sharpening the shadows of the maples into long black piano keys across the grass. Then we all heard it, soft at first, an echo disguised as weather. A low, steady thrum, texture more than sound, the auditory memory of a distant heartbeat. Uncle Frank straightened. Marcus stopped narrating. Emma went very still. That's traffic, she said, but her voice was asking permission to believe. From the northeast, I said, glancing once at my phone. On time. The thrum thickened into rhythm, pulses braided tight. Wind lifted the hair at the nape of my neck. Leaves trembled. The maples tattled. Jennifer's camera wavered, the frame suddenly human. This is impossible, Dad whispered, not to me. Nothing is impossible for people with car payments, Emma muttered, but the line broke in the middle, flimsy under its own weight. They appeared at the tree line like punctuation arriving at the end of a long, smug sentence. 3 black helicopters, sleek and deliberate, carving the afternoon into before and after. The lowering sun caught the sweep of their fuselages, so each one wore a stripe of molten light. They came in textbook staggered route, then leveled into clean formation. A triangle as neat as geometry homework, and I felt, absurdly, the same flicker of pride I'd felt watching Mila earn her gold star back in grade school for lining up her crayons by shade. Oh, Aunt Patricia said simply, hand to her throat. No, Emma said, but the word had nowhere to land. The rotors pressed the yard to its knees, air turning muscular, trees bending in a synchronized bow. Napkins tried to escape. I pinned them under the platter. Grass flattened in rippling rings. Someone's hat, Uncle Frank's, shot across the patio like a startled animal. The world became loud enough to hush us. The first bird touched down exactly where I'd marked it in my mind, between the garden and the swing set, skids kissing earth. The second settled 10 yards left, the third 10 yards right, completing the triangle with a satisfaction you can feel in your ribs. Rotor wash churned and subsided in a controlled fade, sound stepping politely back from its own spectacle. The side door of the lead helicopter slid open. Captain Rodriguez climbed down first, visor up, reflective goggles perched on his helmet, flight jacket crisp, patches precise. He walked with the unshowy economy of a person who knows every eye is on him and has no interest in performing for any of them. 2 pilots and 3 crew followed from the other aircraft, each moving into post-landing positions without wasted motion. Chalks, visual checks, a quick perimeter sweep. No swagger, no theatrics, just competence. Ma'am, Rodriguez said when he reached me, offering a salute that belonged in older movies and newer realities. Fleet delivered as requested. All systems nominal. Wind from the northeast at 8 knots. Beautiful property. I returned the salute with a small smile. Thank you, Captain. Flawless approach. We can remain on standby or board, he said. Your call. Standby, I said. We'll need about 20 minutes. He nodded once and peeled away, issuing hand signals. Crew dispersed with that particular quiet that says everything is under control. Behind me, my family had become a painting in 3 layers. Shock in the foreground, fear in the middle distance, recalculation in the background. Marcus lowered his phone and forgot to blink. Jennifer kept filming, but her elbows had lost their certainty. Uncle Frank clutched his hat to his chest like it meant something it never had to. Emma turned to me, like a person faced with a magic trick and determined to find the trapdoor. You hired them, she yelled over the diminishing roar. It's a stunt. You rented helicopters. 3 Sikorskis for a backyard gag, I said, dry. How on brand. Dad stepped forward, then stopped, then stepped again. The choreography of a man trying on humility and finding it doesn't quite fit yet. What? What is this, Brandy? This, I said, gesturing to the triangle of aircraft, is what I meant by aviation logistics. Uncle Frank recovered first because disbelief wears out even the doubters. Okay, he said, forcing a chuckle. Say all this is real. If you can afford that, why take a bus? Because how you arrive determines the story people tell themselves, I said. And because carbon footprints are real. And because sometimes it's good to keep your feet on the ground. We've been worried, Mom said, eyes bright with wind and something else. If you had all this, why didn't you tell us? That's a longer answer, I said. But the short version? Every time I tried, you told me what success should look like. Cars, condos, proof. It got easier to do the work than to narrate it. Emma laughed, short and sharp, a bottle knocked over on tile. So, you punished us, with a show. I looked at her, my sister, who could organize a closet into a cathedral, who had once bandaged my knee without making me cry. No, I said. I set a boundary with a demonstration. Different things. Dad tore his gaze from the helicopters long enough to find anger. You still live in a studio. I don't live in a studio, I said gently. I sleep there sometimes. Mostly I work. Where? Jennifer asked, camera back up. Some secret lair. Airports, I said. Hospitals. Airfields after floods. Boardrooms that won't allow phones inside. And sometimes I turned, taking in the porch light Dad replaced last summer, the window Mom washed every Tuesday, the backyard swing that still carried the ghost of Emma's laughter. Sometimes here. What does here have to do with any of this? Dad asked, and for the first time there was a thread of fear in the weave. I paused. In every family story, there's a sentence that tilts the floor. You say it and the furniture slides. 3 years ago, I said, the bank prepared to foreclose on the house. The numbers were tight. Late notices, rate adjustment, a misapplied escrow, doesn't matter now. What matters is you were going to lose it. Both my parents went very still, like deer deciding whether the noise is thunder or teeth. That's not, Dad began. I bought it, I said, through a subsidiary. Then I leased it back to you at a rate you could afford. Emma's laugh tried to arrive and failed. That's not funny. Wasn't a joke, I said. The title is held by Trans Global Properties. We keep things quiet because quiet is usually kinder. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. She wasn't crying yet, but a future version of her was. Why wouldn't you tell us? Because you would have said it was charity, I said. And then you would have been angry every month. This way, you thought the bank had restructured the loan and you could sleep. Dad's jaw worked. We don't take handouts. You didn't, I said. You paid rent. On time. Proudly. That's the thing. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to keep you. Wind moved through the maples like applause that didn't want to be noticed. Beside me, Captain Rodriguez approached, respectful as a footnote. Ma'am, operations on the line. Singapore requests confirmation on the service window and flight hour cap. 1 moment, I said, stepping aside. Into the headset. Confirm 95 over 3 years. 12 helicopters exclusive, cap at 900 flight hours annually, with emergency overflow at premium rates. Medical priority clauses stand. Redirect Nightingale 5 to Colorado. Divert 7 to British Columbia if Edinburgh can't cover Scotland for 2 hours. Copy, Rodriguez said. Edinburgh likely green in 1. I'll route accordingly. I clicked off and turned back. The pattern in their faces had shifted, skepticism to awe to something harder to name. Grief, maybe, for a story they'd loved that had just been taken apart. Marcus cleared his throat. So, you actually... Yes, I said. Like all of it? Not all the sky, I said. Just the parts that need organizing. Emma stared at the grass, the grooves her boots had made, the imprint of impatience. When she finally looked up, her mascara had smudged into punctuation marks under each eye. You could have told me, she said quietly. Me, if not them. I would have... I don't know. Would you? I asked, not unkind. She opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know, she admitted, and the honesty made her look younger. Dad swallowed the rest of his whiskey and placed the empty glass on the patio table as if returning a crown. You still took a bus, he said, and everyone heard the last plank of his argument creak under him. I did, I said, because I wanted you to see me before you saw the machines. Mom finally cried then. Small, neat tears, as if even grief in this house knew where it was allowed to go. She reached for me, but didn't touch. What happens now? She asked. I looked past her to the helicopters, our triangle, steady as a promise, and felt the answer assemble from the quiet places I keep for decisions. Now we decide if this is a family or a scoreboard, I said, and if it's the first, we start over. No one spoke. The yard listened. 15 minutes, I added, checking my watch. Then I leave. We can spend them screaming, or we can take a tour. Aunt Patricia surprised us all. Tour, she said, voice shaky, but alive. Please. I nodded to Rodriguez. Captain, guests on the perimeter only. Engine bays closed. Safety briefing first. Copy, he said, and his voice carried. Perimeter markers in effect. Please follow my crew's instructions. Watch your step. Phones allowed, flashes off. We moved toward the aircraft. Emma walked beside me, quiet. After a few steps, she bumped my shoulder like we were kids again and said, barely audible, I hate that this is how I learned, but I love that it's true. I know, I said. Me too. The rotors had cooled to silence, but the air still trembled, a ghost vibration lingering in the chest long after sound was gone. My family stood in a half circle near the first helicopter, their shoes sinking slightly into the soft November lawn. A few leaves stuck to Emma's boots, the same color as the streaked mascara beneath her eyes. Captain Rodriguez's crew moved efficiently, one adjusting a pressure gauge, another checking rotor alignment, a third taking readings on a handheld tablet. It wasn't for show, it was routine, the kind of routine that keeps people alive. Mom stayed back, arms wrapped around herself. They look military, she whispered. Some of them are, I said. Ex-military, I mean. Pilots, mechanics, logistics coordinators. I recruit people who understand discipline. Emma laughed under her breath. Of course you do. Dad frowned at the insignia stitched onto the flight jackets. That's your company's name? Transglobal Aviation, I said. We operate medical transport, disaster relief, and executive travel. These three are part of the executive fleet. He turned to me. You expect me to believe that this, he gestured at the aircraft, belongs to you? I didn't answer. I let Captain Rodriguez do it for me. Sir, he said with quiet authority, these aircraft are privately owned and maintained under Transglobal Aviation Holdings. All registrations traced to that entity. The founder's identity is, by design, undisclosed to the public. Dad blinked at him, as though the captain had spoken another language. And who's the founder? Rodriguez turned to me. Ma'am? I nodded once. He faced my father again. You're looking at her. The words landed heavier than the helicopters. Uncle Frank gave a dry, nervous laugh. Oh, come on. She's, what, 31? No one builds an empire like that by 31. I met his gaze. Someone has to. He fell silent. Aunt Patricia's voice trembled. But you live so simply. You rent a small place. You take the bus. You don't even... Drive, Emma finished. You don't drive, Brandy. Why build an aviation company if you don't even have a car? I smiled slightly, because I was never interested in roads. Her face tightened, unable to find a comeback. Mom stepped forward. You're telling me you've been... what? Flying across the world while we sat here thinking you couldn't pay your rent? Yes, I said softly, and that's partly my fault. I let you believe what you wanted to believe. She shook her head. No, you lied. I withheld, I corrected. There's a difference. Every time I tried to share something, it turned into a joke about bus fare. I realized silence was safer than proving myself. Dad's jaw flexed. You think you're some kind of martyr? No, I said. Just someone who learned where words stop working. Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat gently. Ma'am, operations requests immediate confirmation on Singapore. Shall I patch them through? Go ahead, I said. He handed me his headset. The faint static of global connection filled my ear. Confirming final contract parameters, came a clipped British accent. 95 million over 3 years, yes? Confirmed, I said. 12 helicopters, priority for emergency medical transport. Option to extend another 5 years pending performance. Understood, the voice replied. Singapore thanks you. I handed the headset back. Dad stared at me. Did you just sign a $95 million contract? Yes, I said, while standing in your backyard. Marcus muttered, holy, but didn't finish. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of jet fuel mixed with turkey and autumn. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and went silent. Emma took a shaky step closer. You really started this? From nothing? Not nothing, I said. From $200,000. Dad's brow furrowed. From where? Grandma Chen, I said. She left me an inheritance. You told me to buy a house. I leased a helicopter instead. Uncle Frank gave a short bark of laughter. That's insane. It was calculated, I said. At the time, there was a gap in emergency aerial logistics. Governments couldn't coordinate fast enough during crises. I started with one leased craft and an algorithm that matched flight times to response windows. 2 years later, we had contracts with 3 countries. Rodriguez added quietly, "We've rescued over 9,000 patients through our medical division since inception. Flood zones, war zones, wildfire evacuations." Mom's eyes softened, flicking from him to me. "You save people?" "When we can," I said. "That's the part I care about." For a moment, silence settled like dust. The only sound was the faint ticking of cooling metal. Emma crossed her arms again, trying to recover ground. "Then why hide it? Why not show us sooner?" "Because," I said, "you wouldn't have listened. You'd have measured it in square footage and car models." "That's not fair," she said, but her voice was fragile. "Isn't it?" I looked at her. "You were all measuring me by absence. What I didn't buy, what I didn't drive, what I didn't show. I learned to let the absence speak for itself." Dad turned away, staring at the helicopters as if they'd insulted him personally. "You own our house. You run a corporation. You make millions. And yet you came here on a bus to, what, humiliate us?" "I came here to have dinner," I said. The humiliation part wasn't my idea. No one moved. The wind lifted one of the linen napkins from the table, sending it tumbling across the grass. Emma caught it instinctively, then held it too long, fingers tightening around fabric that had nothing to do with what was unraveling between us. Aunt Patricia exhaled shakily. "You always were quiet. We thought it meant timid." "Quiet doesn't mean small," I said. "It just means I was listening while everyone else talked." Jennifer's phone trembled in her hand. "Are you recording us for something? Like a documentary or PR?" I shook my head. "No, this is just life." She lowered the phone. "Then this is the most insane Thanksgiving in history." "Maybe," I said, "but at least it's honest." Captain Rodriguez approached again. "Ma'am, Edinburgh confirmed. Scotland request handled. Operations green across all divisions. Fleet standing by for departure orders." "Thank you, Captain," I said. "Tell the teams to log hours and take downtime once cleared." "Yes, ma'am." He turned to go, and Marcus whispered, "He called you ma'am like you're the president." Emma glanced between us. "And you just command people like that?" I shrugged. "Someone has to keep the sky organized." She huffed a soft laugh, incredulous and jealous all at once. "You make it sound so easy." "It's not," I said. "It cost me years. Sleep, friends, but it was worth it." Mom's voice broke the quiet again. "Worth losing us?" That one hit differently. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the worry lines carved deeper than I remembered, the exhaustion behind the foundation. "I didn't lose you," I said. "You just stopped seeing me." Her lip trembled. "We wanted to help." "No," I interrupted gently. "You wanted to fix what you thought was broken. But I wasn't broken, just invisible." The air thickened again. Even the crew paused, sensing the shift. Emma whispered, "You really own everything?" I nodded once. "This house, the aircraft, a hotel chain in Thailand, some resorts in Hawaii, a few apartment complexes in New York. But that's not the point." "Then what is?" Dad demanded, voice rising. "That none of it changed who I am," I said. "And yet the moment you thought I had nothing, you treated me like nothing." He opened his mouth to argue, but words failed him. I checked my watch. "We have 10 minutes left." "Until what?" Emma asked. "Until I decide whether I stay for dinner," I said. The crew began rechecking instruments, their movements a metronome to the tension in the air. Mom took a hesitant step toward me. "Brandy, please, don't leave angry." "I'm not angry," I said. "Just done apologizing for being different." Rodriguez gave me a subtle nod, confirmation that all systems were ready. Emma reached out, catching my wrist. "What happens if we say we're sorry?" I looked at her hand, pale and shaking. "Then maybe we start again, but not here, not today." I turned toward the helicopters, their black hulls gleaming against the fading sun. "Captain," I called, "we'll be departing shortly. Prepare the manifest. Thanksgiving dinner. Pack it up." He grinned slightly. "Yes, ma'am." As he moved away, Emma whispered, "You're really leaving?" "For now," I said. "Sometimes distance is the only way people learn to look up." Behind me, Mom's soft sob folded into the sound of engines warming again. The wind picked up. The napkins danced. And for the first time all day, my family fell completely silent. Not out of disbelief this time, but awe. Engines idled low, a mechanical heartbeat steady enough to fill the spaces where words failed. The setting sun poured through the treetops, striping the yard in bands of amber and smoke. Mom stood near the patio table, fingers clutching the edge like it could keep her upright. "Please," she said, voice trembling, "don't just fly away. We need to talk about this." I took a breath. "We've been talking for years, Mom. You just didn't hear me." Dad's voice cracked through the hum. "We hear you now." No, I said quietly. Now you see me. That's not the same thing. He took a step forward. You think you're teaching us a lesson, but this isn't love. Love doesn't humiliate people. I turned toward him. And ridicule isn't love either. His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't look away. The same man who'd once lectured me on responsibility was standing in the light of my aircraft, realizing I had taken his lessons further than he ever dreamed. Why didn't you tell us about the house? Mom asked softly. You bought it out from under us. I shook my head. I didn't buy it from you. I bought it for you. The mortgage was weeks from default. I used a holding company to purchase it before the bank could foreclose, then I leased it back at half the cost. I didn't want you to lose your home. She pressed a hand to her chest. All this time, you've been our landlord. Your daughter, I corrected, just wearing a different hat. Dad exhaled slowly, the sound more tired than angry now. You should have told us. I tried, I said. You called it fantasy. The breeze caught my hair, lifting it across my face, and for a moment I remembered the last Thanksgiving I'd spent here before everything fractured. Emma bragging about her condo, Dad joking about how I'd never afford one, Mom smiling with that faint edge of pity. It wasn't cruelty that hurt most. It was certainty. Their absolute faith that I could never be more than their disappointment. Emma approached then, her voice low. Was any of this about revenge? No, I said. Revenge wastes too much energy. This was about truth. She nodded, eyes glassy. Then why does it still hurt? Because truth always does, I said. But pain passes, and maybe it makes room for something better. Behind us, Rodriguez's crew finished packing the food containers into metal crates labeled TGA Ops. He signaled me. All ready, ma'am. Thank you, Captain. He hesitated. Permission to speak freely? Of course. He gestured toward my family. Sometimes we don't get to choose how they react. We just keep flying. I gave a faint smile. I know. He walked off, leaving us in the hush of idling engines. Mom wiped her eyes. If you own all this, everything, then why live so small? Because excess makes people deaf, I said. I didn't want to become what I was raised to envy. Dad's voice softened, barely audible over the turbines. And yet you did. I shook my head. No, I became what you never expected. That's not arrogance. That's survival. He looked away, his jaw set. Emma swallowed hard. What happens now? I go back to work, I said simply. Tomorrow's a new quarter. There's always another contract, another crisis, another chance to fix what's broken. That's not what I meant, she said. What happens to us? I hesitated. For the first time that night, my certainty faltered. That depends on whether you can stop keeping score. She blinked at me, confused. Every conversation with this family has been a scoreboard, I said. Whose career is better? Whose car is newer? Whose life looks more successful? None of you ever asked if I was happy. Mom's lip quivered. Are you? The question hung in the air like a flare. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say no. Instead, I told the truth. Some days, other days, I'm just busy enough not to notice. Rodriguez approached again, clipboard in hand. Ma'am, departure checklist complete. Ready on your command. I nodded but didn't move. My family waited, the moment stretching too thin to last. Dad cleared his throat. You always said you'd prove us wrong. I guess you did. I met his gaze. I never wanted to prove you wrong. I wanted to make you proud. I just stopped needing it when it stopped coming. The words sank in. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no sound followed. Mom stepped closer, her perfume faint, familiar, like old linen and sugar cookies. If we asked you to stay for dinner, would you? I smiled sadly. Dinner's already packed for my crew. They've been in the air 6 hours. They deserve a meal more than I deserve another argument. You're leaving. I have to. She reached out and caught my wrist. Then tell me this wasn't goodbye. I hesitated. That depends on you. She blinked back tears. What do you mean? Can you love me without measuring me? I asked quietly. Can you look at me without comparing me to Emma? Without asking why I don't live the way you wish I would? She didn't answer. The silence told me everything. I stepped back. Then maybe goodbye's just the truth wearing its Sunday clothes. Emma turned away, wiping her face with the back of her hand. You always did talk like a movie. Maybe because real life needs better dialogue, I said gently. Rodriguez gave a final nod. Ma'am. Boarding, I said. The crew moved into position, rotors beginning their slow, thunderous spin. Grass whipped against our legs. The air became motion. The house behind us glowed in the fading light, warm, fragile, unaware of how close it had come to being lost years ago. Dad shouted over the rising roar, You'll come back for Christmas? I paused at the helicopter's open door. That depends. On what? Whether you want a daughter or a symbol, I said. Because I can't keep being both. Mom's tears finally spilled. Brandy! But the rest of her words vanished beneath the wind. Rodriguez offered his hand to help me in. I took it, steady despite the tremor I refused to show. The cabin lights glowed amber. Inside, metal and leather hummed with restrained power. As I strapped in, I looked once more through the glass. My family stood frozen in the yard. The people I'd loved enough to save and the ones who had never believed I could. The engines surged. The world tilted. The yard fell away. The helicopters lifted in unison, rotors cutting through dusk like synchronized heartbeats. Below us, the yard, their yard, my yard, shrank into a patchwork of orange porch lights and trembling shadows. Through the window, I saw Mom raise her hand, maybe waving, maybe reaching. Then the world folded her away in distance and hum. Rodriguez's voice came through the headset, calm, professional. Fleet ascending to 300 feet, ma'am. Formation steady. Copy, I replied. My tone was steady, but something unmoored inside me. I stared down at the shrinking house until it was no more than a dot of beige between two lines of maple trees. The same house where I learned to dream and to disappear. The captain glanced back from the cockpit. Destination, ma'am? I exhaled. Change of plan. Take us to Oahu base. Let the crew rest. Full dinner service when we arrive. He smiled. Understood. The aircraft banked east, slicing into a sky that was turning lavender, the last streaks of sunlight retreating like secrets too tired to hide. I closed my eyes, and for the first time all day, I let silence fill the space where tension had lived. A chime sounded, messages cascading through my phone the moment we cleared the local network. Emma, please come back. We need to talk. Jennifer. I deleted the video. I'm sorry. Marcus. That was the most insane thing I've ever seen. Respect. Dad. You were right. We were wrong. About everything. Mom. You'll always be my girl. Please don't let this be goodbye. The words glowed against the screen. Little digital attempts at repentance. I didn't reply. Not yet. Some lessons needed silence to take root. Rodriguez's voice broke the quiet again. Ma'am, crew requests permission to secure communications for downtime once we land. Granted, I said. And make sure they get the Thanksgiving meal packed earlier. Full portions. They've earned it. He turned slightly. You know, ma'am, they'd fly anywhere for you. I've never seen loyalty like that. Loyalty isn't earned through orders, I said softly. It's built through consistency. He nodded, eyes back on the sky. Still, you've built something rare. I looked out at the horizon. The last light reflected on the ocean below, a wide mirror stretched to infinity. Maybe, I murmured. But what's rare isn't always understood. We flew for hours, night deepening into a velvet quiet. The cabin lights dimmed, soft gold tracing the outlines of instruments and faces. One of the younger pilots hummed a tune, something old, wordless, steady. When we touched down on the private airstrip near the resort, the air was warm and salted, the wind carrying the scent of hibiscus and sea. The crew disembarked, laughter tentative at first, then freer. Rodriguez walked beside me as we made our way toward the beach. You ever think they'll understand? He asked. My family? I said. He nodded. Maybe, I said. When they realize love isn't proof of success, it's acceptance without proof. He smiled at that. Sounds like something you should put on a company plaque. Maybe one day, I said. For now, it's just a reminder. The resort lights glittered along the shoreline, the kind of view that would have made Emma gasp. I walked barefoot across the sand until the tide licked at my ankles, cool and forgiving. The crew set up a small table, turkey, casseroles, the cranberry sauce I'd stirred hours ago in a kitchen that no longer felt like home. Rodriguez poured a glass of wine and handed it to me. To Thanksgiving, he said. I raised mine in return. To family, I said, then paused. The kind that sees you. He smiled. That's a good kind. The others joined, voices overlapping softly in the ocean wind. The toast was simple, imperfect, human. For the first time that day, I felt peace. Quiet, real peace. Not the kind earned by proving something, but the kind that comes after letting go. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Dad. Dad, we set your old room back up, just in case. My eyes stung unexpectedly. I typed 3 words before I could stop myself. Maybe next year. Then I put the phone away. The waves lapped closer, erasing footprints one by one. Above us, 3 helicopters rested like sleeping giants on the runway, their rotors glinting under the moonlight. Symbols of everything I'd built and everything I'd had to leave behind to build it. I looked at them and then at the people around me, the crew laughing quietly, passing plates, clinking glasses, and I realized something. Success isn't the noise you make when the world finally listens. It's the silence you earn when you no longer need to explain. I raised my glass again, this time toward the night itself, to the ones who believed in nothing until it flew right over their heads. Rodriguez chuckled. That's one way to put it, ma'am. We ate until laughter replaced the sound of rotors, and for the first time in years, I felt full. When dessert came, I took a small bite of pie, the same one I'd carried on the bus, and smiled. Sometimes the journey that humbles you is the one that crowns you. Sometimes the road you're mocked for taking is the one that leads to the sky. And sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's becoming someone they can't define anymore. I leaned back in my chair, the sound of the sea blending with distant engines cooling on the tarmac. If this story moved you, I said softly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story too. The waves answered in whispers.